The Liberal Democrats, or LibDems, were formed in 1988 as a merger of the Liberal Party and the Social Democratic Party, SDP. Amongst all the turmoil of Brexit negotiations, the Lib Dems have come out as the sole party under a pro-EU banner. Now, a founding principle emanating very clearly, especially in the legacy of the Liberal Party, is the value and ideology of liberalism. Liberalism is an incredibly complex ideology. It asks some tough questions and possibly asks more questions than it can answer. And a popular starting point for a treatise on liberalism is John Stuart Mill. Born in the 19th century in Britain, Mill coined what was later known as the harm principle. And the harm principle is a hallmark of liberalism. It effectively provides an individual the freedom to do whatever they like, as long as it doesn't affect another person. Put in a more common and popular phrase, your freedom to swing your fists ends where my nose begins. And liberalism was in stark contrast and in opposition to many contemporary ideologies throughout history, such as the absolutist monarchs who reigned supremely over their people. And as liberalism became more established in the 19th century, it fought to establish itself as a representative of democracies and democracy and of the rule of law in opposition to the divinely appointed rule of monarchs. And by the 20th century, liberalism's main opponents were fascism and communism, and in our more contemporary culture, liberal democracies have become the norms in the West. Contemporary liberalism has expanded its horizons to emphasize various interpretations, and two particular interpretations of liberalism is ones that we want to discuss today, namely classical or economic liberalism and social liberalism. As its name suggests, economic liberalism or classical liberalism plays a particular emphasis on economics and the belief in the power of a free market economy and free market capitalism. And a pioneering and famous work which described the power of free market capitalism was written by Adam Smith in his essay The Wealth of Nations in 1776. In Smith's opinion, the benevolent free market is directed by self-interest of individuals that make up the economy. Therefore, every citizen's interests and checks and balances ensure proper distribution of supply and demand, enabling the prosperity of a country and its economy. And this, in Smith's view, is much more effective than any government intervention. An alternative approach and a more recent development out of classical liberalism is social liberalism. Social liberals still espouse the effectiveness of free market capitalism and believe that's the way forward. However, their emphasis, as the name suggests, is more on social issues, such as the social emphasis on the inalienable rights of citizens to healthcare, education, and a protection from poverty. Social liberals condone the inherent biases, discrimination, and opposition within a free market economy, and believe government intervention is required. And a highly influential philosopher of the 20th century named John Rawls describes and expands on this point very effectively as he deals with issues of social injustice. John Rawls realized that his native country of the USA was plagued by inequality and injustices. His primary question was, how can you deal with these issues? And his answer to help people was to encourage people to understand the other person's viewpoint. And he accomplished this through a clever social experiment called the Veil of Ignorance. And effectively, what the Veil of Ignorance does is challenge people to think, if you knew nothing about where you were going to be born, what kind of society would you want to be born into, where the chances and abilities and opportunities are the same for the very rich and the very poor? and he felt sure that current free market economies were certainly not the answer, and was encouraging people to create a better future together. Now, liberalism inevitably has many critics too, and while liberalism seems to respect other people's rights and principle, it certainly has its problems as well. Again, as an example, let's come back to one crucial aspect of liberalism, the harm principle, and John Stuart Mill. His essay was written in the heyday of the British Empire, an empire which, while perpetuating the benevolent values of tolerance and acceptance, saw violence as an essential and a justified means to an end. Mill was a champion of tolerant imperialism and benevolent despotism. He effectively said that authoritarian regimes, like the British Empire, were justified if they helped the regions, of course, being ruled to develop and improve themselves. And importantly, a metric for improvement was industriousness and a free market economy. Therefore, liberalism, looked as described by John Stuart Mill, assumes that the ruled want to be ruled and improved on. And as a result, all of this put together ensures that Mill's views of liberalism actually justified imperialism, colonialism, and racism. Now, putting both together, you have both classical and social liberalism, and both find a home and are inherent in the LibDems. So the questions now arise: how are these values practically worked out in the party? How do you remain liberal when opposed to illiberal values? And are these values truly represented in the party? And is liberalism all it's made out to be?